All right, welcome to another episode of Comic Book Squares. We just want to remind everybody about our big contest for 2023. We're going to help find a new writer in comic books. We're partnered with Dream Foundry on this, and just remember the deadline is the end of September to get your stories in. So to kick the show off, my name's Shane.
I'm Paul.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Mike. Let's get this show started.
All right, well, welcome to another episode of Comic Book Squares. We have a real special guest on today. Ken, can you do us a flavor and kind of introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, my name's Ken Brown. I'm the owner of Drawn to Comics with my wife, Susan Brown, and an incredible staff of people that keep us going. We have been open since 2005 in downtown Glendale, Arizona, and we are a full-service comic shop. We love the world of comics, everything from Marvel, DC, any independent that we can get a hand on, and graphic novels, trade paperbacks. We don't do a whole lot with card games or video games, but we try to be a pure comic shop as much as we can be. We have a great toy department too upstairs as well that revolves around the world of comic books. But yeah, just loved comics since I was 9 years old and still get to do it today, which is a blessing and an honor. Thanks for having me on, guys.
That's awesome.
Oh, that's very cool. Well, obviously, full disclosure, I go to Ken's shop, and it's absolutely a fantastic shop. The great thing is Ken is just such a warm, welcoming person. Every time people come into the store, he's just he makes you want to come back just because of Ken's smile and his warmth whenever you come in is fantastic. So, the part of the reason why I wanted to have you on the show was, the whole reason for this YouTube show's existence is, our support of the independent comic book world. And I know that that's something that's important to you because I see a lot of independent, artists come into your store. So just, can you tell us a little bit about, your support of the indie world and why you do that? Have them come into your store like on a regular basis.
Yeah, dude. I mean, it's a perfect day to be talking about this too, as well, because Russ Kazmierzak is one of the most indie Arizona guys around. And he's doing his 24-hour comic day from our front window. And he sets up at 1 p.m. today and goes 24 hours straight creating another amazing Arizona comics issue. And it's the 7th time doing it, which blows me away. The commitment that he has making independent comics, but the fact he chooses to do it from our window shows how much we love and support the community of indie comics as well. And it's cool to see the future of comic books, whether it's being on movie screens or from people just loving comics themselves and creating their own stories. It's a form of artwork that's never going to go away, and it's awesome to see the indie market be so strong as it is today. And we like to celebrate that at Drawn to Comics too, and have our support by doing the different events. If someone comes to me and says, "Hey, I've got a comic, will you carry it?" And I go, "How about I have you set up in the store and you showcase your book to the community, because nobody can explain this better than you." And if someone asks me a question, I want the 110% feedback coming from the people that create the book, because one, they create that bond with you because they get to meet the person that creates the book. And that's what drives conventions nationwide, is people getting the opportunity to meet their famous or most favorite creators. And you get to be in that presence yourself through our shop. And then people, and I hope, will never forget your book after meeting you because you have that passion because you created it. So that's something we really try to contribute in the community as much as possible. Anytime someone presents us with a project they're working on, let's get you your spotlight in their store, and it's right by the front door, and they get a table, no charge. They get to showcase their work, their art, their comics, whether they're completed or just the plans. We want to see you get out there and be creative, and that's what we've been trying to be supportive of since we opened.
That's amazing. That is amazing. That you give them that, not just the opportunity to have their book in the store, but they can come in and speak to it. I mean, I think that's every indie creator's dream, is to be able to explain the whole thing to everybody, because yeah, you're right. They're the ones who are passionate about it and created it. Now they get a chance to not only showcase their book, but be there to, talk to folks about it and be the face of it. So that's an awesome opportunity.
Thank you.
Very cool. That. Well, Yeah, I mean, you're obviously your passion for comic books, like you said, from early age to today, and just being immersed in that culture and everything. What were some of the indie books that you may have enjoyed when you were growing up?
Wow, dude, some of the favorite indie books. I will be honest, I was more of like a Marvel and DC guy growing up.
Hmm.
But as I said too, there were certain things I like to read. I mean, it was kind of spoofs of Marvel and DC books. Like
Uh,
Xmen was like that, the X-Men with Dark Jean. Do you know what I mean? It was like a spoof of the Dark Phoenix saga. So I remember reading that one
right, right,
specifically. I'm going, oh my gosh, this is so fun. It's almost like Mad Magazine satiring X-Men, even though it wasn't. It was an independent black and white book trolling the Dark Phoenix saga. And I thought that was hilarious, dude. And just, seeing the different things like, oh my gosh, Dark Jean's back again, because they couldn't obviously call it Dark Phoenix or, X-Men, but they
right,
just took out the hyphen and they were allowed to publish it, which was awesome. Other ones I
right.
remember reading too as like growing up too is Liberty Projects, which if I remember correctly
Mm.
was by oh my gosh, dude! It wasn't Mark Wade. It was, I think, I'm not Peter David's early stuff. Do you remember who wrote Liberty
Oh,
Project
okay.
back in the day? And also
Yeah, I think you might be right.
Grendel, Matt Wagner's Grendel. I was a big fan of
Oh,
Matt
yeah,
Wagner's Grendel as
Love
well too. And
Grendel.
yeah,
Mage, the Hero
love
Discovered
that.
by
Yes.
Comico,
Yep.
and Elementals by Comico, because John Byrne
Ah,
did a cover of that
yes,
too as well, and that was fun. Let
yes,
me see, Doomsday
absolutely. I
Plus
love
One,
those.
because I was a big creator fan as a kid, and that's why Name Store Drawn to Comics was like that. Without the
Ah,
artwork, they're just novels, which is great. Novels are
yeah,
awesome, but when you get the art and the
right.
literature into one piece, I'm on fire. And yeah,
Yes.
dude, it's like that. Anything that really drew my attention eye wise was super awesome. Robotech too, as well, because Comico was doing that back in the day.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
Let me see too, like Alien Worlds by, I think it was Eclipse Comics back in the day too. Was it Aliens Worlds
Yeah.
through Eclipse back in the day? Um,
Yep.
let's see
Yeah.
too. Just tried all kinds of different things because yeah, Marvel and DC were most in the forefront, but it was fun to try other
Yeah.
stuff. I was a little bit picky as a kid. I didn't read many black and white comics because I loved the
Mm.
full completed product. So I got to be honest, dude, I
Right.
was stupid. I missed the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles craze. I remember trading
Oh,
comics
yeah.
with kids in the neighborhood, and I had one kid that I knew had Turtles #1, and I
Oh,
had Fantastic
You're
Four
like,
#12,
nah.
which was the first thing versus Hulk, and he
Oh,
wanted to trade
yeah.
me the Turtles #1 for the Fantastic Four #12, and I go, dude, this is the first battle between
Oh.
the Thing and the Hulk. What are you talking about, man? There's no way this is an even trade. And now I look back and I'm going, oh my gosh, dude, I passed on the first Turtles #1. And
Uh,
yeah, Fantastic Four
oh
#12 still part
man.
of comic history with Stan Lee type of stuff, but it's an icon,
right.
Turtles #1. And it's
Yeah.
Yep.
it was a fun story back, eighth grade, just sitting there and trading comics with friends. And even back then, I was still oblivious to how big Turtles would become back in 1986 and 87 when that was happening.
Right.
84, was when Turtles came out, obviously.
Oh,
So
yeah.
Turtles were only 2 or 3 years old, and that Fantastic Four #12 was from like 1962, 63.
Right.
And so you're kind of going, dude, this book's already got
Yeah.
20 years of legs. I don't know about this Turtles, dude. It's
Right.
oversized. It won't fit in my comic box. What am I supposed to do with this, dude? Because I'll throw in a
Flash in the pan
USF
comic
football
book.
set. And remember the United States Football League, you guys? He had the
Yeah,
I
first
do.
United
I
States
do. I
Football
do.
League trading card set. And he was willing to throw that in
Oh,
too. And I'm
wow.
saying, come on, dude, this league is not even in
Wow.
existence anymore. So unfortunately, my foresight's morally about like what I like to read more than what something may be worth, obviously. You
Oh
know
my
what I mean?
gosh.
Right. Right.
Do you
Oh,
still
if we.
have your comics? Like you were just talking about, collecting since you were a kid. Do you
Some of
still
them. I have
have
my
some
Alpha Flight
like
collection,
issues?
ironically. And that's the only thing I still
Oh.
have from my
Oh, nice.
childhood was I kept my Alpha Flight collection because stupidly when I was in eighth grade, I said, oh my gosh, I'm going into high school. I got to start growing up and stop reading comics. Well,
Oh
if it
Yeah.
wasn't for
no.
Todd McFarlane, I would not be doing comics right now. And the way that Todd McFarlane
Really?
Oh,
drew
yeah.
Spider-Man, because I was a big black suit Spider-Man fan. And that's what got me
Yeah.
into comics as a child. Because I used to watch Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends and like Spider-Man,
Yeah.
Firestar, and
Yeah.
Iceman. And when I was
Yep.
at 7-Eleven, used to, 1984, playing the Star Wars arcade game and getting a Slurpee and going into the magazine rack. Do you remember Cartoons magazine?
Yes.
It
Oh,
was like kind of like
yes.
Mad magazines
Yep.
for hot rods.
Yep.
And I used to want to
Yep.
be a car designer as a kid. So I loved looking at that because it was cartoony versions of real car designs. And so I
Yeah.
would pick that up and read that on a regular basis. But then they had comic books at the 7-Eleven right next to it. And Spider-Man number 258 was out that month. And it had like Peter Parker, the guy I knew from Spider-Man's Amazing Friends, being pulled between his costume and something that was a black and white, image of like with the Spider-Man looking face on it with all black and white. And I'm going, what is this? And I started reading through it and I go, that is how Spider-Man should look. That's awesome. I think that's one of the coolest concepts I've ever seen as like, a 9-year-old seeing that. That was like the coolest thing ever, in my opinion. And, it started like expanding on into other things. And I saw Secret Wars was happening at the time too. And I go, oh, cool. He's still in the black suit in this 9, 10, 11, and 12. And, by the next issue, he was in the red and blue suit again. And I'm going, what in the world is happening, dude? So I wanted to suck up as much black and white stuff suit wise as possible. And the cartoon, Spider-Man's Amazing Friends, never had it on. And eventually I discovered the comic shop in my neighborhood. And I asked them, it's like, dude, it's like, how come they don't have that black and white suit on Spider-Man's Amazing Friends? And they go, because that show was canceled 2 years ago. It was stopped being made in 1982. And I'm going, seriously? It's like, so how am I going to get more black and white suit Spider-Man? He goes, well, there's two options. There's continuing to read Secret Wars, and they're going to put it back in the suit coming up inside of Amazing Spider-Man and Web of Spider-Man and Spectacular Spider-Man. And you can get back issues.
Right.
And I'm going, okay, what are back issues? And it's like they're older editions where the comics had the storyline that you're looking for. And I'm kind of going, okay, so I learned what a back issue was right away there. Can you show me some of those? And they showed me Spider-Man number 252, which was the homage to Amazing Fantasy 15. And it's Spider-Man in the black and white suit swinging across the cover with two people under his arm rather than one person that was in the Amazing Fantasy 15 cover. And I go, oh my gosh, wow, that's awesome. I would like to buy that. And it said $4 on it. And I'm going, it says 60 cents on the cover. I've never paid more than 60 cents for a comic book, much less 75 cents for the Secret Wars. Why is this $4? And they go, because that's what market value is on this book right now. And I'm going, market value? How do I know you're not ripping me off? Because I'm just a kid. I got paper route money.
Right.
I don't have a whole lot of money. I can save up for this now. And he goes, well, there's something called Comics Value Monthly. And Comics Value Monthly is a guide that the nation looks at on how to price comics that become hard to find, like this one has become, or very popular in the marketplace. They go, can I buy that magazine? He goes, sure, you can subscribe to it if you want to. And I go, please, I love it. And so that's got me going down the wormhole of what collecting comics was all about. And ironically, like one of the stores I discovered shortly after that was all about comics. And then it just blew up because I saw adults collecting comics. And that's when I was in 7th and 8th grade. And that was around the same time McFarlane started on Amazing Spider-Man. And my jumping off point was going to be Spider-Man 300. And this was back in 1987 when I was in 8th grade, because 88 was my freshman year of high school. And I saw, okay, 300 is my jumping off point because they're going to put him back in the red and blue costume permanently, was what more or less the story was going to be. And Venom was going to be the black suit. And I'm going, dude, that's like a, jumping off point for me, because the reason why I started collecting comics was because of that black and white suit and how cool it looked on Spider-Man. And now as a kid, like, when you're prepubescent or teenage years where you get more or less ticked off by anything, do you know what I mean? Like at that age point, it's like, hey, you know what, dude? Marvel's kind of told me I don't matter, because I like this black and white Spider-Man suit and they just made it a villain. And I don't want my favorite thing in comics to be a villain. So that was going to be my jumping off point. And so 300 on the last page, when Spider-Man put back on the red and blue suit, and you saw the way Todd McFarlane drew it, from all of a sudden, like getting rid of almost every comic in my collection except Alpha Flight, to I need to go get 298, 299 again, and I need to start going forward with collecting Spider-Man again. and it kind of got me back on the road of collecting comics. So the only thing I really kept up
Nice.
to that point was my John Byrne Alpha Flight collection. That's the only thing I still have from my childhood is Alpha Flight 1 through 59, because after a while too as well, I stopped collecting Alpha Flight because I felt like it got too far away from John Byrne's plan for the
Mhm.
team into more of a
Yeah.
supernatural element where the characters lost focus and it was just the villain of the month type of thing again.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's kind of the
Yeah.
long story
So
That
short, or short story long, however you want to put it. But that was my comic book origin story, I guess you would say.
Yeah. That's
I
awesome.
absolutely love that. All those, bringing up all those old Comico, titles when, the indies that you were talking about just brings me back because I read all of those ones that you were talking about. I still
Yes,
have my Elementals and I still have my Grendel. Yeah, I
outstanding.
love all that stuff. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I've seen your
That's so
collection. You
cool.
brought it into me one time, and I'm going, "Oh my gosh!" Or at least some of the keys. I can imagine how deep it is now. You still have all the original stuff from the '80s, dude. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. Too many things I've got in my collection for sure.
Yes,
So, going back to your story, you talked about this comic shop, the person in the comic shop who like walked you through what back issues were and how this worked and that worked and the pricing guides and stuff. Is that something you try to emulate now in your own shop? Is that something you've tried to bring to your own shop of like, trying to engender that excitement for comics and fan that flame for, maybe new fans who are coming in?
yes. I still try to. It's hard because there was something that we were kind of spoiled with in the '90s was Wizard magazine. And I really think
Oh
Mhm.
Wizard
yeah.
magazine spoiled a lot of fans of making it super accessible before the internet. And it's like there was
Mhm.
Yeah.
Overstreet that used to have a monthly magazine, but all it was like a Beckett. You had like maybe one article and a bunch of prices. And so you had key
Yeah.
Yeah.
things like that, like first appearance or artist or a carrot arrow that pointed up or a carrot arrow that pointed down, telling you like why
Mhm.
the comic was important. Or they'd sometimes, do you know what I mean? It was not very in depth
Yeah.
through like Overstreet and Comics Value Monthly at the time. And then Wizard came along and turned it into like Entertainment Magazine. Do you know what I mean? It's like they talked about the
Yeah.
artists, they talked
Yeah.
about the writers, they talked about what you should be reading before it came out. It wasn't like a previews guide for retail owners, it was a guide for
Mhm.
fans. And so you didn't
Mhm.
Yeah.
have to wait for it to show up in the store, you could plan on it. And it was
Mhm.
a mixed bag of tricks because I kind of feel Wizard created the collapse of the 90s in a way, but it also
Mhm.
inspired so many people to look at the world of comic books, if that makes any
Yeah.
sense. It was no
Yeah.
longer for just comic fans. It was accessible on every Walden Books. It was, available
Mhm.
at Barnes and Noble, Borders. Do you know what I mean? Like everywhere where finer magazines were sold, comics weren't always there,
Mhm.
but Wizard was. And you had the
Yeah.
opportunity to take a look at comic books and see if it was something that would entertain you or interest you. And it did interest a lot of people because they looked at it from a common person perspective rather than a comic book fan perspective in a way. And then knew how to hit that comic book fan hard and easy where we would be entertained like that. The Bart Sears how to draw segments and the
Mhm.
Wizard Hot 10 list and the interviews with the big time creators before their books came out. And it was in
Hmm.
full color. They had a mail-in section where they published people's letters with their art on it. And it was
Mhm.
so submersive for not only the common person, but the diehard fan. I mean, the price guide had pictures of some of the hot books in there, and they had,
Yeah.
like they highlighted pink for it going down, or no, pink for it being hot, and blue for being a cold if the book went down in value. And
Yeah.
they had their
Yeah.
top 10 list of movers and shakers. They had a top 10 list right by the price guide of the hottest artists in the industry. So it was very educational and informative for comic fans and newbies alike. And as I said too, and unfortunately, some
Yeah.
of the newbies didn't care about the industry, they cared about the dollar signs. And when you have people
Mm.
buying a bunch of copies of books where the print runs hit like, over 1 million copies again, or 2 million copies, and people that are buying that many copies equal about maybe 15 to 10 to 20% of the total audience who have the book, have like 80% of the copies. That's the readers getting their 1 or 2 copies, and then investors getting about 80% of the market. Do you know what I mean? And it's it kind of become a hoarding issue. And so the values were being overinflated way too quickly. Like Spawn #1 selling for $40 1993. It's hard to get that today for a Spawn #1, and it's 30 years old.
Right.
And so it was eventually the market had to fall out a little bit, because the people that were hoping to sell these, the fans got their copies, and then the people hit that saturation point. I'm not paying any more than $40 for this book. And the prices started going back down, and people were taking losses on this. And so what happens? All these people leave the industry and go try to find other ways to make money for themselves. And you had the market crash. That Marvel went bankrupt in the 90s. And obviously there was the movie company acquisition of Marvel too. Like, was it New Line Cinema, or who bought Marvel back in the 90s? Do you remember who bought them?
Like, I do not. I know that they were going around. I know they were going around Hollywood at that point trying to sell off all of their assets for, that's why Sony still owns Spider-Man, and they just got the Hulk back from Universal because they sold off the Hulk world, and then Fox obviously had Fantastic Four and X-Men.
Yes,
and so when Disney bought all of Marvel, it was a bit of a struggle to get all of those properties essentially back under their own roof. That's why they had to buy Fox Studios as a whole, because they weren't going to part with the X-Men and Fantastic Four. So it's like, well, we'll just buy the entire Fox Studios then, which it's it was a mess back. You're 100% right. But it's interesting you bring up Wizard, because we interview artists from all over the world, and the love for Wizard is still strong to this day in a lot of people. It's amazing that magazine had such an impact on a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I know, like, I was really, I'd been into comics since I was a kid too, but it was around my teenage years, early teenage years, that I was like, I'm too cool for comics now. It's weird. In my closet, and I was like, I'm too cool for this. But then I walked into a store, in the mall, and there's a Wizard magazine, and I was like, I'm going to check this out, and I was pouring through, and then all of a sudden it reignited that passion again for comics. And next thing I'm subscribing to Wizard, and then I got a pull box at my local comic store again. And and I was, fascinated with the world of comics again. It did help with that. It's like, to your point, it's it kind of helped the industry, a little bit. And then it also, with all, toward the end, was helping with its downfall, at least with the, some of the investment sides and all that.
It's like that.
When it becomes more about money,
that's the hard part. I mean, I said too, the hobby is hobby first. And like, I think when people start turning it too much into monetary, the hobby side of it is always there, but the people looking at it monetarily get bored if they don't see what they're looking for, or they're not seeing their return on investment that they're looking for. And so it's like with any type of hobby, dude, like model plane making, or or coin collecting, or stamp collecting, there's always going to be the hobby side of it, but the monetary side of it will make an impact both positively or negatively based off of whatever they're trying to accomplish. And if you're just enjoying it as a hobby, you're never going to be affected in that, in my opinion. Do you know what I mean? Because you're going to enjoy the hobby, because you're not wasting money buying anything, because you're buying it usually at the entry level price. And, whether it's like even Star Wars toys, if you're picking up a Star Wars toys off the pegs for retail, you're enjoying that for what it is. It may be worth 10 to 20 times, or 100 or 1,000 times if you did it back in the 70s, if you kept it in the package back in that time, or it could still be worth 10 to 20 times out of the package at this time, because of the market interest has grown Star Wars organically. And the same thing happened with comic books. Once you
Yeah.
started having comic conventions and, meetings where people with the same interest in the hobby get together, it starts a natural marketplace for it. It's like, hey, Action Comics #1 sold for $100 back in the 1960s. Do you know what I mean? And that kind of like,
Mhm.
wow, dude, this is more than just reading material. There's something to this. And now people pay like 3.2 million
Mhm.
plus for Action Comics #1. So it's okay to have
Yep.
Yeah.
both versions of collecting comics. It's just the keeping it as organic as possible, I feel, keeps it healthy rather than it being the tail wagging the dog. Like if there's a top 10 list that changes every week on the internet, that's really not altruistic research. That's just looking at eBay and seeing what comics close the most for that week. And for all due respect, people that do that research, that's a lot of research. And that's another
Yeah.
option for collecting comics. I just don't know how sustaining it is for the long term person that's really looking to invest in comics, because they're always chasing their tail trying to get that book either before it comes out and hope it's going to be on a hot 10 list, or after they see the hot 10 list and it already skyrockets out of a viable range for the casual reader or the person that's spending more than market value on it, because it's a cause and effect relationship. If someone's seeing that, oh wow, that book's worth $10, I better go buy it, and then someone bumps up to $15 because they see that list and they think that's naturally rising, and it maybe just be a temporary market spike that goes back down the next week when the new list comes out. So with all due respect to people that do that, I just try to really dive into what's making these comics a good value for you to purchase as a retail owner versus something that may just be a temporary spike that if you're looking for it to spike more, I can't tell you that's going to keep on happening, because it may not, and it may, but more
Right.
likely than not, it's a temporary spike for your money.
It's a
Yeah, I
spawn
totally
#1.
agree. Yeah.
Sorry about
Well,
that. I didn't mean to go on like a
as a
tangent there.
No,
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 it's
no.
all good. No,
Yeah.
it's all great. Well, as a store owner, when you've got to order product for the store,
Yes.
going back to kind of the indie side of things, how do you look through the previews guide and decide what indie stuff you're willing to take a chance on that may have not, really hit a big time, like something like a Sweet Tooth, where there's a Netflix show that's related to it, so people are more
Yes.
interested. But like, so indie stuff before that even happens, how do you, as a retail owner, decide where to spend your dollars?
Yeah. I like to gauge what my customers already like. Do you know what I mean? Like that, I've got like a lot of
Mm,
customers interested in horror comics right now. It's like there's a huge, seems like an interest
mm,
level. I don't know if it's because the Scream movies, getting revived a little bit,
mm,
or the Werewolf by Night Disney Plus show went over so well.
Oh yeah.
Elvira's
mhm,
making a comeback again too, and
mm,
Vampirella's made a strong comeback again. But there's also like good stuff like by James Tynion. He's like amazing
Uh,
as a more
yeah.
or less what I call social fear horror writer. Like he'll look at
mm,
what's coming on in society that people have like social stigmas about or social fears about, whether it be like doomsayers or flat earthers or, Department of
mm,
Truth is one of his major
That's
titles
so
that
good.
mhm,
way. And he did one like
mhm,
called The Closet that deals with kids' fears of a monster in the closet while they sleep. A Nice House on the Lake,
mhm,
people that are afraid of the apocalypse. And, this new one called World Tree, which people like, I don't quite understand the dark web, but it's kind of not something for me to explore unless I'm going to get in some kind of trouble.
mhm.
And that's what World Tree
Yeah.
is
Right,
about, of
right.
like how bad can things get with people going into these fears. And he's great at writing that kind of fiction. So anything by James Tynion, dude, I give it a shot, because it's like that he's usually nails on his storytelling. Sometimes there may be a flop, but
Mhm,
he's not just dedicated to DC or Marvel. He does a
mhm,
ton of image stuff and other independent stuff. I mean, he's got a website called
Yeah.
Tiny Onions, which he's doing stuff all the time on that too. So he's really good at pushing the indie market. So I don't want to just like plug James Tiny in here, but he's like something, if I see that, it's no brainer to
yeah,
order from him. But then also like I look
right,
for other types of horror books that I feel that are mass interest. Do you know what I mean? Like there's
Mm,
Antarctic Press
mhm,
puts out, a horror monthly book, and Dark Horse, obviously Hellboy people still consider the horror genre, which is funny. And um just like that Harrow County, anytime something new comes out of that, but just like anything that looks to fit in that genre, if it's by an indie creator book, let me give it a shot, see if it sells. I'm going to order 5 copies. If it sells out, then I can reorder more
Yeah.
for the next issue. But then getting people interested in subscribing to it, that's how I've got to more or less grow the the orders on those books. It's like sometimes, maybe as low as 1 or 2 copies, but I'm pretty sure that I can at least get 1 or 2 people to try this because it looks good. And that's part of the beauty of collecting since like 1984 too. It's not just like someone saying, "Hey, comics are hot right now. I'm going to open a store and hope I do well." I think there's a true like
mhm,
testament to loving the hobby for what it is for a long period of time before seeing like how popular the hobby is in this moment. And I think that will help any comic shop owner that's hoping to open their own shop is show that track record of not only just looking at what's happening in this snapshot of comic history, but become a student of comic books as much as you can. I mean, I wasn't around the
mhm,
1930s or 40s when Superman or, Batman or Captain America. And some people, if you like, hey, what's Timely Comics? And I go, Timely Comics is what Marvel was before it was Atlas. And they go, what was Atlas? I go, Atlas
mhm,
was not only a comic publisher in the 1970s by Larry Lieber, Stan Lee's brother, who we gave permission to use the name Atlas Comics. It was a comic that was a transition company between Timely and Marvel. In fact, if you look at Fantastic Four #1, it'll say publication Atlas Comics, not Marvel Comics Group. And it's just, what I mean?
mm.
Conversations like that become a student of this industry. No matter what kind of ups and downs it makes, you'll always be hopefully on the right side of the hills for yourself.
Nice. Hey,
That's
I've
awesome.
talking about indie creators still, and it's like you're talking
Yeah,
about
I'm
them coming
sorry.
in your store. What if you had an indie creator come to you and ask to come in? What are some like what would you recommend to them as like pros or cons on trying to
Mm,
get into a store, trying to get like trying to talk to you about it? What are some good things and bad things? Of some things to avoid and things to try to do if they're speaking to their local comic shop owner about, hey, can I get my book into your store?
Yeah, I try to tell people like that I don't start off buying a whole lot because I used to do consignment, and consignment's like
mhm,
a very hard thing to manage because everybody wants to leave their books with you, and then when you sell them, it's just when it comes to doing like paperwork, it's extra paperwork for yourself that you're so busy
Mhm.
doing so many other
mhm,
things. It's like, hey, let me just buy 3 to 5 copies off you, and if they sell out, I'm gonna reach
mhm,
out to you and buy some more. That's how I used to do it. And then I said, let's start
Yeah.
doing, as I said earlier, let's get you in here and you bring copies and you
mhm,
explain what's going on in the story because you know where the story's going. I've just read the one issue you brought me. And so I could just say, here's what
mhm.
happened this one issue. And if it doesn't hook that person just by me explaining it to them, they're not going to buy the next issue. But having that
Right.
person in front of them and explaining their vision of where the story's going, I don't have that vision. That's their vision. And so that's why I started transitioning into the fact of get yourself in here and share with your passion and they'll see it. Me, I have like so many other things that I need to try to be concerned with. And I don't have that same passion. I'm going to be honest with you that you have for your book because it's not my book. And that's where I
Mhm.
think
Yeah.
that's where the benefit of growth through audience of like I can help you promote and I can help you say like, hey dude, you're gonna be at this, store at this time and this is what I know. Here's a link to his website, but I still think like one-on-one interaction is always the most successful way to promote your indie book because there's so much stuff on the shelf and how are you going to stand out?
Mhm.
You as an
Yeah.
individual is always what makes you stand out over anything else because they're not there talking with any of those creators with things out the book. As I said too, it's like the beauty of indie creators is you get to bring yourself to comic shops all around the valley and not have to worry
Mhm.
about waiting for a convention, not having to wait for, you know, it's on your time schedule. So as long as you put the work in and you put your comic together and you believe in what you're doing and you're able to more or less share that passion with others, that's kind of that first step to success, is getting the product done. And the second part is getting in front of comic shop owners and saying, hey dude, I'll set up and be here for this book. And if you have time or if you have space, I would love to present my book to you as a public. And did just a 2 hour, little presentation where it's almost like appointment TV back in the day. It's like, not everybody's going to make it,
Mm-hmm.
but the people that are there, you have the chance to present yourself to them. And I think that's irreplaceable as a creator. Getting your work out there is, you got to put your work into getting it in front of people. And that's not always easy. And don't ever be like biased towards one store versus another. It's like, this is your product. If the other store owners don't see that this is your dream to get out there, if they're trying to like more or less create like a loyalty with store owners, that's not good for you as a creator. You need to be out there in as many places as possible, because not every customer is in every store. And they're, you know what I mean? They don't care whether or not this creator showed up in this store or that store. They're excited to see that creator in front of them. And that's what I said too. Like, don't ever limit yourself to like, oh, okay, it's like, I got to stay in the Phoenix market to present my books. Call Albuquerque stores, call San Diego stores, call stores out of your market. Flagstaff, Cab Comics, Corey up in Flagstaff. We did a panel at Phoenix Fan Fusion. Great guy. He loves indie stuff too as well. And just don't limit yourself to one store, much less one market. If you really believe in your comic, and I know it's hard because a lot of people have full-time jobs and they're creating comics, but when you have your vacation time, like you pick out your vacation time, I've got 7 days off, I'm going to start trying to hit 6 different stores. Or if you feel like you've covered this market well enough, like I said too, hit up San Diego, hit up Denver, hit up Salt Lake City. Make it a fun trip for yourself, and you're getting your comic out to as many different people as possible. Especially if you're doing 1 or 2 hour stops, you can hit 4 or 5 stores in a different city just by being a good time manager of yourself, which is super hard. Don't get me wrong. Time management is something I struggle with every day too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just feel like that speaks to, who you are as a human being, and that you give back to the community and allow them space in the store. I can't give enough kudos to you. I've said at the beginning of the episode, I think the world of you, and I think you're
Thank you, Shane.
a great human being, and I've just been happy to know you all these years.
I appreciate it. I apologize.
I really think.
Go ahead.
Oh, there's nothing to apologize for. It's all good, man. I just want to thank you again for, taking the time out of your day to come onto the show. And I think it's really important for indie creators to be able to hear from the retail side of things, what it takes to get, their book out there. And there is a lot of work, like you had said, most people are working full-time jobs, and here they are coming home and spending time creating art and, putting themselves out there. And then there's the whole other business side of it, is like, well, now I've got to sell it in order to, try and make a living out of this, or at least make some money out of it. And, there's other skill sets that have to be developed besides the artistic side of it, whether you're writing or you're an artist, all the hours and hours that's invested into that time to develop that skill. Then the other skill is being out there and promoting yourself and being the business side of it. So I think I'm so happy that you were able to come on and share that side of the world with us. I really appreciate it.
Can I make one more suggestion for people too as well? I mean, you're talking about
of course. Yeah.
It's like that. If you have a family member or someone that is like been a best friend for years that like believes in your work, or if you have the money to spend on a business manager, like make them do that legwork for you so you can focus on your creating. Because that's something I see a lot of creators get stuck in the rut of too, is that, oh man, it's like, I'm not very social with people, or I'm spending so much time trying to do my marketing, I'm not getting my work done. And almost put together a team around yourself. And if you don't have that money right now, share with them your vision of like, this is where I see it going, here's what I'm going to do, here's what I need, are you on board? And then if not, well, it's just not ready to that point yet. Or you're gonna have your best friend say, "Yeah, dude, let me do that work for you, dude," or "Let me get
Mm-hmm.
out there and help you do the work that will help get your book out there." Boy, you're focusing on the creating. Like I've got, I don't know if you're familiar with like Jason Worthington and Jared McConnell. They used to write and do art together. Jared was the writer and Jason was the artist.
Mm.
Well, Jared just become Jason's business manager now, and just, hey, Jason, you focus on doing
Oh.
artwork and your whatever comic book idea you want to get going. And we've had tons of plots. We've worked together since high school, dude. So it's cool that you have a
Mm-hmm.
writer that's already got a lot of plots that you've known since 15, 16 years old together. That's like the perfect relationship. And it seemed like Jason, he
Mm-hmm.
was
Yeah.
my store manager for 8 years, and he goes, "Yeah, dude, I want to pursue my comic book dream again, because I got that inspiration." Go, dude, Jay, you go do whatever you want, because you're freaking amazing and you're amazing. Get out there
Mm-hmm.
and do that. And that was like an honor to have him work with us for so long. But it's awesome at Comic Con this year, seeing him in his element and just kicking butt. Do you know what I mean? And that was like super cool. And Jared was handling the business side, and Jason was able to talk about his art and just talk about what, projects he has coming. And it's the future for him coming true. And I love it. And that's what I want to see for every creator that has that type of dream. And it's like those are just examples of, like, he's all over Instagram promoting his stuff, and just get out there and like that's a it just chase the dream. I hate saying, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but if you have the dream, pursue it until someone tells you you can't do it anymore, or you're just like not feeling your dream anymore.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
Ken. Hey, Ken, before we head off here, can you tell our listeners and our viewers where can they go to find out more about your shop?
Yeah, we're on Instagram and Facebook. Not as much on Twitter anymore. It's like that. I used to have it where the Instagram would Twitter for me, but something happened
Oh,
where I somehow disconnected in it, and then I'm going, okay, I don't remember every single login that I have, and I've lost my Twitter login. And so I can't log back into Twitter to get that connection again. But on our website, DrawnaComics.com, in person at the store, we're closed on Mondays, but we're open Tuesday through Sundays. And just like come on in and have a conversation with us, or reach out to us through some of the social media outlets, and let us know how we can be of help to you in your enjoyment of comics of all kinds.
Awesome. Thanks, Ken. And to the listeners and viewers, we'll have all those the links and stuff in the show notes and in the video description on YouTube.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well,
yeah.
Once again, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
No problem, you guys. Thanks for having me on, dude. I hope it was a fun show for you guys.
Well, thanks again for tuning in. This was just a special episode. Hopefully we can do more of these with more retailers. Make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and notification bell so we can keep bringing you content like this. And we'll see you on the next one.